To episode two of Between Two Tittles, starring a close friend, Phil Whittle, who has 20 years of logistics experience and has recently transitioned to the shipper side. You're here with me and my wife, Sarah Tittle. I'm Brent Tittle, and Phil is now between two Tittles. Phil, welcome to the podcast. Do you want to do a brief intro of yourself and biography before we begin?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. I started with Schneider National in the brokerage division in 2006, and I was in that role up until February of this year. And it's at that point that I transitioned to the shipper side of things.
Very cool. Sarah, there's some rules to go along with this podcast episode specifically. Would you like to go over them?
There are. We do listen to our followers. Thank you so much for all the feedback and the love from the first episode. So we did have a mutual friend of all of ours that is a follower of the podcast, Tommy Clark. Shout out to you. Thank you for providing suggestions. So there are a few key phrases that we all know Phil by. And so if he does speak one of those, me and Brent are going to take a drink of a lovely beverage we have chosen for this podcast. So, again, Phil, really appreciate you coming on, but I know you probably watched the first one, so you kind of know I'm the question master, so to
Mhm.
say. I kind of joke, and we'll kind of get the conversation going. So, you mentioned your previous background, and so we first wanted to ask, how
What are the
does
rules, Sarah? Before we roll in, what did Tommy suggest here?
oh, the specific rules? Okay.
Yes.
So one drink for every listen, one drink for every here's the thing. And if you talk about Dave Ramsey,
Hmm.
Brent and I have to finish our drink.
Okay. Okay. We'll see if there's any loaded questions there, but I'm gonna rock with it. Let's go.
There might be a few.
Okay, fair enough. Well, now that we have gone over the specific rules from one of our followers, we'll start with the first question. So you mentioned your previous background. So you were in that side of the business for a while in the supply chain and logistics. How has your transitioning from the carrier side, the brokerage side to the shipper side, really changed your perspective and your perspective of brokers in particular?
Yeah. Um, So I have a lot that I can say about this. Feel free to butt in and cut me off if you need to. I remember, and I've said this for years, I never think it's the broker that someone's working with. I always feel like it's the person at that broker that they're working with. While there's some differentiators, a lot of them have the same resources. And you have to like who you're working with and know that you can trust them. When I came into this role and I initially met with all of the brokers we were currently doing business with, um, I explained to them in detail my history and my experience. But here's what else I told them. I said, when I was in your chair, there is nothing that I hated more than when a new transportation manager would come in and give me the boot and bring in everyone he knows. So I'm like, if you're here, you're here, but it's your job to keep the chair, working with us. And I can honestly say within the first 2, maybe 3 months of this role, I felt like that little old lady you would cold call who picks up the phone and she's like, "We don't work with brokers." I literally found myself getting angry because I saw some of the shadiest things that I have ever seen. Some of them in my career, and that was within the first 3 months. So I think there's
Can
absolutely
can you
great.
elaborate a little bit on the shadiest things? Just you don't have to name names or anything, but can you give us an idea of what you're talking about?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. Some of it's a little long to get into, but here's just a quick summary of something that happened. We have a lot of package freight that comes out of central Colorado. This year, over the summer, there was a massive wildfire in Colorado that was kind of tearing through the state. Because of that, drivers could not access our location in Colorado to get loaded. So we had to divert those drivers to Denver in order to be loaded. Me already being on the brokerage side of things, I knew what was going to happen. And where I'm going at with this is there is published pricing in place, and all of these sales reps built orders. And after the fact, the location was changed on them. So I know that you're going into whatever TMS you work in and you're changing it to the new shipping location. So I had a feeling that some of the published pricing would still reflect the same as though it was coming from our location, whereas most of the trucks are sourced from Denver anyways with a 4 hour deadhead. So I spot checked every single invoice on the loads that were shifted to Denver. And I reached out to all the providers that still had the same pricing as though there was 4 hours of deadhead both ways. And a couple of them told me what I expected. They're like, hey, I'm sorry. These loads were built. We shifted them in our system. Not intentional. Here's your updated rate. We're fixing the pricing. I had multiple brokers tell me, well, look, man, this is our contracted rate on this lane. And I would go back and I'm gonna be like, hey, but listen, like when you give us that rate, you're factoring in 4 hours deadhead that way and 4 hours deadhead back. And did you just drink? You
Well, you
driving?
said listen. Yeah.
I missed it.
So, yeah, have a drink. So I told him, I'm like, this pricing doesn't make sense. And even though they knew my experience, they would continue to lie to me about everything. Hey, even though the carriers aren't driving out there, we're still having to pay them the same, stuff like this until I would, push really hard and then they would lower the pricing. And honestly, I've experienced things even more way higher on the shady scale than that. I have an email chain with a very prominent broker based out of Chicago. The email chain goes on; it's a mile long, but ultimately, they lied to me, and I knew they lied to me. So I asked another question. They lied to me again. Asked him another question. They lied to me again. And I just let the lies pile up, right? And I let them pile up and pile up and pile up. And we are talking about a lot of money here. And I dropped the bomb on them. And I essentially called them out on everything that they were doing, from what they were lying on to how they were procuring capacity, everything. And what I thought was interesting is the sales manager dug his heels in for a couple weeks, even trying to intimidate me a little bit, which I thought was weird. And simultaneously, the sales rep sends me an email on the side with no one else in it, admits everything, comes clean, says why
Goes
she felt
rogue. Goes
she's
rogue on their manager. Gotta love it.
yeah, she told me why she felt justified in doing everything that she did, how wrong she knows that it was, and that she just wants the opportunity for her to show me the saleswoman she can be. So it's, and it's just endless situations like that over and over and over that I find myself in. And the thing that caught me the most off guard is I was extremely transparent about my experience sitting on their side of the desk. And I still have, to this day, people try to lie to me. Like I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Ultimately, all I want is someone I can have transparent conversation with, right? And I'm going to get good communication from. I want everyone that we partner with to make money. Because if they're not making money, they're not going to work with us, right? But that doesn't mean that that can't come with transparent and honest conversation.
What has been your best sales pitch so far? And then in tandem, what has been your worst sales pitch so far?
I also want to throw a third in there. I want to throw
Mhm.
also like an honorable mention in there of like, it's not my best, it's not my worst. A for effort, sort of thing. Like you need something
Yeah.
about my company or like you tried, but it's not the best I've heard, but it's not the worst I've heard or either. So three categories. Best, honorable mention, like and then worst.
Yeah, I would say honorable mention. I'm going to start there. I'm going to forget about the guy. He tried, I could tell he tried to research our company before he reached out to me. And he was very adamant that he knew a lot about our network and where we were shipping from and where we were shipping to. But half of the locations were wrong. So I was like, okay, it was well structured email. It was a good sales pitch, but it's like, come on, dude. Like, no,
Do you think
no.
it was AI? You say
Uh,
well structured. Do you think it was AI?
no, it wasn't AI. I typically you can kind of tell when it's AI. People get a little happy with the M dashes and things like that. This this was not this was not AI. This was a guy that came across as extremely confident and polished, but didn't know the information that he thought he knew.
Fair.
I would say some of, probably one of the best sales pitches that I've got is someone who did know our information. And not only did they know our information, but they shipped from our vendors. And to be honest, I still wasn't really in a position where I was looking to add someone, but the guy was extremely professional, which I liked. Um, he came across as extremely honest, and I would get constant communication and updates from him. They never felt pushy. They were subtle, but they were like, "Hey, I just want to give you visibility to everything that we did out of your vendors this last week." And he would send me the load list. He would take out the relevant information, but he would give me real insight into like, hey, this is why and how I can provide value. I'm familiar with the rules. I'm familiar with how it works. And I mean, ultimately I work with that gentleman now. So he was probably my favorite. And as far as getting my attention, he hit the nail on the head. I would say as far as bad, there has really been a lot of bad ones. I would say 95% of them are bad. A lot of it's like, hey, what truckload or LTL do you have going on right now? Let me quote it. But I don't have the best example because I just don't have a lot of time for the bad ones. I get so much correspondence from brokers and carriers. If I engaged with everyone that reached out, that's literally all I would do all day long.
How much do
Do
you get
they,
between phone and email? I'm just curious, just for our listeners. I think
Yeah.
we've been in the industry a while. We kind of have a rough estimate of like shippers kind of tell us, hey, we get X amount of calls or X amount of emails a day. What
Mhm.
do you get, Phil? I'm just curious.
I probably got 3 calls on my phone today. I would say I get more emails than anything else, and the emails don't just go to me. I also get emails forwarded from sales guys, emails forwarded from other people in the company. So, there's a lot of people that are procuring the information from, who knows where. Some of the email addresses they're sending them to are people that don't even work here anymore.
are they
So,
going to your Gmail domain account? Are they going to your company domain? Or where are a lot of these falling to?
yeah, they come to my company domain and I get it direct to my cell phone.
You've gotten calls on your cell phones. How do you feel about that when it comes directly to your cell phone?
No, I mean honestly, I'm not opposed to it. I started cold calling people on their cell phones. I would say it was right around COVID. Something switched there where it felt more acceptable. It's probably because everyone was remote and that's how they were communicating. Also, it was around that time, maybe a little after that, Schneider rolled out the opportunity for their sellers to subscribe to Zoom Info, which essentially just scrapes the emails for the signatures. And a lot of people had their cell phones in their signatures. So, when I was prospecting, the cell phone was one of the main points of contact I would get. So probably around 21, 22, I started doing it all the time. So I don't think anything of it. And if I am going to talk to someone, I would prefer it be on my cell phone anyways,
And I
because it's
remember
fun.
that. Like I was still on the sales side at that point, and a lot of companies they weren't prepared
Yeah.
structurally, IT wise for COVID. It just so you'd call an office phone and you get nothing. And
Yeah.
so you're in sales, you're told to be creative. Okay, think outside the box. How are you going to get their attention? And that's just where it turned to. And
Yeah.
that's what you had to do to get somebody's attention because the first thing is, okay, can I get them by email? Okay, they're getting flooded with email because they can't get them on the office phone. Okay. Now you got to go outside of that and you got to find their cell phone number and see if you can get them to talk to you on that. I remember those times. It was crazy.
Yeah, it was a easy adjustment for me because I started working from home full time in 2015, 2016. So when the big panic happened and everyone went home, I was like, well, this is just, another day in the office for me. Um, but I do recall the VPNs being a huge issue when you talk about them from an IT standpoint, not being prepared for that because it was one day my manager came up to me out of the blue and they're like, hey, we're all going home and we're staying home effective immediately. And I was like, okay, here we
Was
go.
this before or after you built a sauna in your house? Was this around the same time? You got to get a little sweat in every now and then too, right?
Yeah, the sauna went in 2016,
All
very
right, when you
beginning.
had to sweat it out a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
So now you have new providers. We're
Uh-huh.
upcoming on a new year.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts of what's coming in the freight market, and what are some of these brokers signaling to you?
Yeah, so the signals have changed throughout the year. There's obviously been a big push around all the CDL issues and drivers coming out of the marketplace. One thing that's been in the back of my mind um, is the bankruptcies. I remember, I believe it was Q4 of 2023. More carriers went out of business that quarter than any other quarter in recorded history. Then you follow up in 2024 with, I believe, like 6,000 carriers a month going out of business. Um, when COVID happened, um the rates went through the roof, and when you see that, that's typically when you see carriers trying to buy more equipment. The problem is everything during COVID you couldn't even get a used car, so they're fighting over equipment that is at an absolute premium. And the market crashed within a few months. So I imagine some people probably made a mistake in the equipment they purchased. Some companies weren't necessarily run very efficiently, and they've kind of been weeded out. But I've had more concerns around the bankruptcies and carriers going out of business than I have around the CDL issue. Because when you look at the number of drivers coming off the road versus the number of carriers leaving the marketplace, that's a little bit scarier to me, you know.
Is theft and fraud ever on your mind when you're working with some of these brokers?
Yeah, I had a broker stop a fraud issue. It was either this morning or yesterday. But the fraud stuff has been getting out of hand for a minute. It may have been freight waves, but I was reading something on LinkedIn last week where the shipper was fake and the carrier was fake. They had spoofed a legitimate shipper's email address. And you have some new inside sales rep who thinks he's closing a new customer, and the criminal is sending him the load, and then as soon as it's posted, the criminal is calling them, offering them a low price so that they get the load. And they're like, hey, you got quick pay, right? Quick pay set up. Oh, the load picked up great, the driver was great. And the broker realized something was wrong and requested that the driver go back to the shipper, which there was no driver, there was no shipper. They had talked to the shipper and they're like, we don't know what any of this is. So it's really getting wild out there.
Well, it's funny you say that because I know something we've been seeing is the initial approach was on the carrier side. Because I feel
Hmm.
like a lot of bad actors felt like that was the more vulnerable side of the industry with emails,
Yeah.
phone numbers, whatever it is. But with shippers now, with onboarding things like that, you're having to take an extra layer. Because let's say financial information they send you doesn't match their company address or whatever it is. Okay, red flag. That then that could be that situation. So I know there's a lot of brokerages that are on the alert for the carrier side and now the shipper side. And
Yeah.
in a time where it's hard for the carrier community, brokerage community to get business, you want to have the ease of doing business, but you got to protect yourself at the same time. So it's really like that balance of, okay, how can you communicate that with the customer without being like, okay, you're too hard to work with all these hurdles I got to jump through, I'm not going to work with you, sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure it's going to continue to develop. I feel like the initial focus was on the extremely high value freight. But I am starting to see the games pop up across the board, and I don't know if anyone is immune to it. So
So your thoughts on next year's freight market? I'm not going to ask you for if you're having budget increases or decreases, but are you're saying you're not going to see a major change? You're saying it's going to be flat next year? What are your thoughts there?
yeah, I stay as up to date on the market as I can. I feel like what we've seen the last couple of weeks, and I imagine next week is going to be a rough week as well, is kind of reminiscent of what we saw in December of 24. But I don't feel that consumer confidence is that high. I don't feel like people are spending money the way that they're spending money. And yes, the stock market is doing well or has done well this year. I'm not necessarily convinced the economy is doing as good as everyone thinks. Um, I think if you see a big spike in consumer confidence and people are spending more money, yeah, that could absolutely turn everything into the carrier's favor pretty rapidly. But until I see a change there, I feel like it's going to stay relatively flat. Um, some people are saying, hey, by next summer. Some people are like, hey, through the end of next year. I could be wrong, but I feel like it's going to be soft, at least going into the first 1 or 2 quarters of the year. And some of my carriers agree with me, and I can tell that by the pricing that's been submitted for Q1. Um, some of them don't as well. So we're gonna have to see how it plays out. But the truth of the matter is, nobody really knows. Everyone's throwing spaghetti at the wall, and whatever piece of spaghetti sticks, they're gonna be like, "Look, I told you." So we'll see what happens and how it plays out.
So you're saying it's going to be on the supply side if there's going to be any kind of effect in the market. You don't see anything in the demand side really going to be moving it that way.
No, 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 no. I really don't. And what most shippers are concerned about is like another 2021, right? So in my perfect world, I would start to see the prices gradually increase now. And that's a lot easier to manage than, hey, I need 15,000 to go from California to
Versus a
Jersey.
whiplash. Like what happened is like, okay, took a huge dip and then everybody built up their inventories and they were like, oh crap, I've got too much
Yeah.
on my dock. It's costing me a lot of money. Now I got to pay to get it off my dock. And it's just this huge whiplash effect that happened. I remember talking to a lot of shippers and that was their biggest issue out of COVID. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No, that's
it
okay.
reminded me of that.
Well, and I've had some carriers tell me like, look, you're going to be paying more and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like
Which crystal ball you look at it right now? Because
Well,
everybody's looking at it different the past 2, 3 years.
even if they're
Right.
correct, even if they're correct, I don't care. Like, because if the freight market changes and the cost of transportation goes up, we're not at some competitive disadvantage. You know what I mean? With our competitors, it goes up for everyone. It's still an equal playing field. What I care about is I have good partners, reliable people, and the resources to get my freight moved. That's what's important. So I'm cost is always going to be a factor for everyone, but when it comes to what the cost is going to be and how's the market going to change, it's going to be what it's going to be. I can't control it. The carriers can't control it, but I can control making sure that I have the pieces in place so that my freight is executed on.
Well, and I know that you mentioned what's important to you.
Mhm.
Can you kind of tell our viewers with 5-2, so what you all do,
Yep.
what why you consider that in your decision making, things like that?
Yeah, so we act as the sales and marketing arm. We partner with chemical suppliers all over the globe, and we assist them in bringing their product to market. A lot of times, once it hits the United States, I'm running with it at that point, one way or the other. So, not only do we have a responsibility to our customer base, but we also have a responsibility to the suppliers that we partner with. And, managing the logistics and all of that, it's extremely important.
Yeah, I appreciate that insight. You hear all this, and I know a lot of us who've been in the industry or in management roles are like, oh, we need to bring the new minds into the industry, things of that nature. So if I was a student with a logistics degree or a supply chain degree, and I'm like, I'm going to come into logistics, like, what would your best advice to them be coming into this crazy time?
Yeah, this is not the easiest time for them to come in, but if they were coming in at this time, I would probably give them my Amazon speech, which some people have heard before. But it's like imagine you order something on Amazon and you get the notification, hey, it's 10 stops away. And then you check your app, you're like, hey, it's 5 stops away. And then you look at the app again and it's 2 stops away, but Amazon sends you a notification that says, we're going to need an extra $25 or we're not going to deliver it. That would upset a lot of people because the way our minds work, the typical transaction is I give you money and you give me the product. And unfortunately, that is not the way the transportation works. That's the way it's worked the last couple of years, but that's not the way it historically works, right? So, what I would tell someone new is that their success will be defined by how many difficult conversations they're willing to have.
When did you know you made it in the industry?
Yeah. So it was 2008 and Schneider tried to do honestly what I believe was its first collaboration between asset and brokerage. And that account was Dollar General. And they asked me to work with the Schneider sales rep at the time to see if I could get anything going for the account. It took me a good 3 years to get it up and going, but I can honestly say Dollar General taught me transportation. It taught me how to navigate through a company. It taught me the politics. It taught me how to ask for money. It gave me my footing closing that account with the Schneider sales rep. Um, it gave me my footing, and ultimately, due to multiple issues, which are really irrelevant, I had to make the choice to give up that account. There was no set account management at Schneider at the time, and the workload became so big, I couldn't do anything else. And I remember thinking when I parted ways with that account, I don't think I will ever make as much money here in this role as I did with that account in my book of business. And I don't think I realized how much I learned working with them, and I was incredibly wrong. In fact, I made a lot more money without that account than I ever did with it. So it was funny to see it play out, but when I felt like I made it is when I felt like I actually understood transportation. I could get on the phone with someone, and I was comfortable with the lingo, with everything, and the exposure to Dollar General back in 2008 through 2011 actually gave me that.
Who are some of your mentors?
So when it comes to like just straight up sales, hustling, closing the business, I don't feel like I really had one that just came to mind, but I absolutely had mentors. And, I would say one of my favorite ones is Billy Bass. And what's so special about Billy Bass is I don't even think he knew he was a mentor. And I don't even think I knew that he was a mentor at the time. But what I learned through working with him and watching him is how to deal with people. Because people are going to let you down, things are not going to go how you want. And everyone thinks that you can have this military hierarchy where you run things with an iron fist and you're going to get the appropriate response out of people. And you're really not. That doesn't work. As a matter of fact, people tend to resent you a little bit when you lead that way. And I find myself to this day managing situations where someone may fall short or where I want to see a change in the behavior, the same way that I saw Billy manage it. And I would argue Billy has always been better with people than I have. So I don't think there's anything wrong in mimicking that behavior. Another person, it's a high stress job. When I was in the office and I was stressed out, a lot of people knew it, but I would have to, right? Tittle knew when I was stressed,
And then
Had
but
to
and then
cover
he
your
would bring
freight.
that. He'd
Yeah,
say, "Hey, Phil was
yeah,
exactly.
stressed. I needed to
yeah.
cover his freight." And then he would bring it to me. So yeah, I heard
Gu
about it too.
guard the mountain. So it's
King of the mountain. That's right. That's right.
but for a while, Adam McGill was one of my leaders, and the one thing I can say that I pulled from him is you have to have fun with it. I think part of me took things that I couldn't control a little bit too seriously. And if I'm just going to be short and to the point, Adam taught me to chill out, laugh at things, not take it so serious. You can't control everything. And him and Billy both being my leaders in the past, I definitely see that in myself now.
One thing I want
You
to
know
say
what?
about Billy before I know there's multiple comments here.
Hmm.
When I was doing stand-up comedy, Billy came to every one of my shows, and I wasn't even reporting to him. Um, he invested into people, right? It wasn't just a 9 to 5 to Billy. It was, hey, I'm in your corner in whatever that you're doing. And so that was another thing that really helped helped me too. Um, Billy also was there when me and Sarah were chatting back and forth when we were dating, and he got a major kick out of that. But no, I can't speak highly enough of Billy as well. Adam as well. But Sarah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I should have known when you were about to propose to me too, because Billy and others would come up to you and be like, "Hey, get a propose, get a propose," things like that. And he just was so interested in his people that the one time him and you didn't approach me, Phil, or approach Brent, I was like, that should have been a signal, right? But what I was gonna say was Billy, and I really tell a lot of these individuals that want to come up in leadership, as I've gone up in leadership, it's if you change leaders, I changed leaders in my first role I think it was 5 times in 2 years that I changed teams. And a lot of people think of that as negative, of like, I can't keep a steady leader, like, I can't get a connection, things like that. But for me, what I realized eventually is that you learn a little bit something from every leader and you figure out how that works in your leadership style. I had Billy, who was great with people. I had individuals who were great on the customer experience commercial side. I had individuals who were good at the data side that taught me a lot. And so, what is it that you can learn from every leader, and what can you implement? What can you bring into your style? But before we brought up Billy, I thought about you actually, Phil. And the
Uh-oh.
reason, because I don't think you remember this.
Hmm.
So I was a brand new sales rep. And you
Okay.
remember how they would bring in the newbies with y'all to listen in on your calls?
Yeah.
And they would tag up to your phone line and the headset and they would just listen to you make cold calls. And I was really intimidated at first. I was like, oh my gosh, Phil's like the best performing guy in here. Like, I'm gonna look like so ridiculous compared to him. And you were making cold calls.
Your eyes were at his standing desk where the desk started.
No, he was sitting at a time. And or they gave me one of the raised chairs because I'm so short, for his raised desk, either way. But you started cold calling and you had somebody just straight up hang up on you.
Hmm.
And I was like, you know what that made me learn is even the best are going to get hung up on. They're going to get objections, not always going to get through it smoothly. And I was like, okay, that's what I learned from that experience. But you were actually my first sit-in with that. I don't think you remember that.
Uh-uh. No, but you are absolutely correct. Everyone gets hung up on, everyone gets yelled at. And what's funny is I have seen highly intelligent people with master's degrees and all that kind of stuff sit in a cubicle across from me and fell. And I have seen some of the dumbest people I have ever met in my life make a lot of money doing this just because they will hustle. You find a smart person that's willing to hustle, that's a dangerous person.
100%.
No.
100%.
So I have to interject, and I'm going to change topics here just a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, so you've been missing golf a lot lately, right? You've had
Hmm.
a lot going on in your new role.
Hmm.
But in tandem with that, you recently got your purple belt in September
Yeah.
in jiu-jitsu. So I I would like you to share when you had made the decision to begin learning jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. Um, so I was doing I was working the parking lot at my church one Sunday. I've always carried, CDL. Most of the time I have a gun on me. And I was doing the parking lot at church and I'll just say a really sketch person came up to me. Couldn't really get him to go away, and it was getting to the point that I felt like things were escalating, and I was a little uncomfortable. And I remember thinking about the gun on my hip, right? Which is natural for someone that carries and you feel like something's going to escalate and it's a weird person. And I was driving home and I was thinking to myself, I was like, gosh, you know what? If I'm carrying a gun and something starts to escalate, if the first thing I think about is the gun on my hip, am I really being a responsible gun owner? Like, is that supposed to be the first line of defense is your gun that you could kill someone with? So what I started doing, I went to a combatives facility in Richardson and I did close quarter combatives, hands, knees, elbows, knives, all that kind of fun stuff. I did it for a little over a year, but while I was there, I, once you start getting into a martial art or fighting or whatever it may be, you start getting on YouTube and you're watching a lot of things. And one thing I noticed when I came across the impromptu street fights, a lot of them wind up on the ground. And I remember thinking, I'm like, man, I don't even have a ground game. I don't like what if it goes to the ground, what am I going to do? And I wanted to try jujitsu. I really did. And you would think after already doing the combatives and everything, I wouldn't be nervous about it. But for some reason, I was nervous about it. And I never went into a jujitsu studio, but it was always in the back of my mind, like, you're gonna try this. You're gonna try jujitsu. Well, what happened was I wanted to get my oldest kid into a martial art. I just want to get him doing something, and I put him in a karate place by our house. And I'm like, let's give it a year and see how it goes. And it was Shotokan karate, which probably doesn't mean anything to a lot of people, but it's basically an expensive dance class. It's more it's more kata based. Like they're not really,
Interpretive or no
sparring.
ballet? I mean, what type of dance are we talking?
Yeah, they're in a gi dancing around. But what happened while we were there is a guy came into the studio one night and he wanted to talk to the parents. And this guy's like, "Hey, I'm a purple belt. I'm friends with the owner of the karate place." And he goes, "I want to get a jujitsu program going here for beginners. Would any of you parents be interested?" And I was like, okay, well, if this isn't a sign, I don't know what is, right? So I immediately signed up. It was not formal training. There was no structured curriculum. It was once a week, maybe sometimes if I was lucky, twice a week. He would have a class. He would bring in a couple students from the place that, he trained at, and they would beat up on me pretty good. But right around that time, one of the most considered, one of the best grapplers ever out of Europe, moved to Plano, Texas, and opened a jiu-jitsu gym right by my house. So I decided, once I knew that I liked it, I'm like, okay, if you're going to move forward with this, like you need the structure. So that's when I went to Progresso Jiu-Jitsu in Plano. And I've been training under Alexander Trans and Davi Cabral, basically since day one. I put my youngest in there immediately. He's 8 now. He started training when he was 3.5. And I pulled my oldest out of karate and I put him in there as well. And it's been extremely rewarding. It has absolutely been one of the harder things and more humbling things that I have ever done. I would argue that the average person has no idea how helpless they are. None. And I walk in there and I'm 6'4", 250. Like I'm a big dude. And I'm just getting pieced up by these 135-pound, someone that you would pass by on the street and you wouldn't think anything of. And when I started, I was around 38, and I hear a lot of people be like, "Man, I wish I would have found this earlier. I wish I'd have discovered it earlier, started earlier, whatever." Everyone's always like, "Man, I'd be so far ahead." But the truth of the matter for me is when I started was perfect because I wanted something to do with my boys that would be a common bond as they get older. You know what I mean? And it is you can roll safely, and it's similar to golf in the fact that you can do this well into your 70s, and I wanted to have that, I wanted to have something like that with my boys. And I feel like if I had started earlier and we weren't doing it as a family, I probably would have quit because I was absolute that first year or two was absolutely miserable. But I've grown a lot. I've compete fairly often. I travel to compete as well. I've gone to Vegas the last couple of years to compete in the largest gi tournament in the world. So active in local tournaments, active in the IBJJF. It is absolutely a part of our daily routine and our daily lives. And I don't know if there's a time that, especially my youngest kid, would ever even remember not doing it. But you're putting yourself in situations where people are choking you or they can snap a limb or whatever that may be, And you're trusting these people that when you tap or say stop, they're gonna stop, and everyone treats each other with that mutual respect. And I feel like you get a closer bond with people than you get in some other traditional sports, just due to the proximity, and you're trusting them with your health. So it's been very rewarding. I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was a long ride to purple belt, but I'm happy I'm here, and I'm gonna keep on rolling.
Has that mindset impacted any of your business? Like when you think about the freight market and working as a shipper, working as a broker, how did that impact you on that side of your life?
Yeah, it definitely helps build resilience in people. I don't even think that's debatable. And there it's kind of like what Sarah was talking about earlier when she was like, the hang-ups and things like that. In jiu-jitsu, you tap a lot and you lose a lot, and everyone wants to leave their ego at the door, but even if you act like you do, that ego's still there. And I just kind of really helps you from an objection standpoint or a complex standpoint. It's a very technical sport. There's very specific technique that you can use in certain situations, and sometimes you have to think your way out of certain situations. And I also feel there's some validity to the fact that it helps you think through complex situations in your everyday life. And then the third thing I'll bring up is it helps you stay calm. What I've realized is when you have confrontation with someone, and it doesn't have to be extremely heated. A lot of times you'll get the elevated heart rate, right? You'll start breathing a little bit harder. You feel anxious and things like that. And when you constantly put yourself in those situations and you're competing and doing all those kind of things, I don't ever really get the same response that I had before I was in martial arts. Like if someone came at me in aggressive tone in the past, if I'm in a convenience store, I could I can remember, like, you could feel your adrenaline go up, you could feel your heart rate go up. And I find myself being extremely calm even in difficult situations and difficult interactions with people. And I've that's probably one of the biggest things that I've noticed, and it's actually pretty interesting. So yeah.
You and Mike Wilkes from Mercer might have convinced me to finally go and enroll. I have a weight loss goal in mind before I get there, just because I don't want to be so massive and hurt somebody.
Mhm.
Um, I also, like, my claim is that growing up, I had a 6'8" brother who, you know, taught me how to defend myself because he put me in those positions frequently. But uh, I think that's probably the most interesting piece to me is like the calming sense, like be able to put away that red mist and being able to think in stressful situations. I think that's something that can really help all aspects of your life.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I hope you make the choice to do it, and my offer still stands. If you do, let me know where and when, and I'll come join you for your first class, and you know, we'll get rocking.
You want to put me in a real naked chokehold, just like Justin asked for, Justin Rizzoli. Yeah, that sounds about right.
I do want to humble you.
Yeah.
And that's what I was gonna say. Is like, oh, I'm gonna big and I don't want to hurt somebody. Like, I want to see somebody humble them. Sorry, that's just me.
Sarah's in. She's in.
See that you talked about like seeing that person that's like 135 pounds versus like you on the street. Like, I want to see that happen to him. So he
Oh my
realizes he's not
gosh.
as tough as he thinks he is.
Uh, You you can't judge. One of the other things that's taught me, you can't judge anyone by how they look. And we'll have a lot of people come into our gym from out of town. There was a girl that was in the UFC that used to train with us, And one day that girl in the UFC came and she brought some people with her, and I didn't know who these people were, but there was a guy, and I remember sizing him up. I was probably still a white belt, maybe I just got my blue belt at the time. Oh my God, look at this dude. This is whatever. And I went with him, and this man could have ripped me limb from limb. It got so bad, he started coaching me through the role. But I'm like, this guy is ridiculous. So the reason I'm telling y'all this story, I looked at him and he just looked like a regular dude to me. Well, I started asking around. I'm like, who is that? Like this guy just tore me up. Who is it? And I find out it's a guy named Charles Bird who was like a UFC heavyweight. He just looks like a normal. So it's like that's what's funny too. Like in these gyms, there's always that mutual respect that I like to compare to the Wild West where everyone had a gun. You know what I mean? It's like when you're in that environment, everyone is extremely respectful because everyone there is capable. And it's like I'm looking at a guy and I think nothing, and then I'm at home 2 hours later Googling a UFC heavyweight, and I'm like, what did I just roll with? So it's interesting.
Well, and during this journey, you mentioned your boys a lot. And so
Hmm.
Brett and I were curious, what is your craziest parenting story with those two?
Oh my gosh. Well, I got two boys. There's tons of fights, tons of nosebleeds. We work on it, the brotherly things. Here's the craziest story. This one has always stuck in my mind, and I'll try to clean it up for the podcast as much as possible. But we were potty training my oldest son. And I don't know how old he was. He might have been 3. He was young, but we were potty training him. And I had ordered what are those boxes where they mail you all the ingredients and then they tell you how to make the meal?
Like a
Uh
meal prep,
yeah,
yeah, that sort of like a home chef or a
yeah.
Blue
So
Apron sort of
Blue Apron.
deal.
That's what it was. I had tried Blue Apron and I had this big kit come and it was like this fish dish and all this kind of stuff and I was gonna make it. And it came and I was excited about it. And I'm opening the kit. I'm like, all right, let's get to cooking. And my wife is like, hey, I gotta run some errands. Like, I'm gonna leave you home with Paul and just keep an eye on him and remember we're potty training him. I didn't think about Paul again.
For
I'm
how
just sitting
long? Did she
it
give you, for how long
well,
was she gonna leave you alone?
I don't know how long she was gone. I mean, we're going on like 7 years ago, maybe 6, but probably 7 years ago. But what happened is I'm sitting here, trying to make this fish dish, and I turn around and Paul is just urinating all over the kitchen floor through his underwear, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. And he's just looking at me by the fridge in a puddle. I'm like, well, I got him cleaned up. I'm like, okay, this is just going to take a minute. And I didn't turn off the stove, right? So, because it was fit. So I'm like, let me pick him up and change him. And then I'll get the mess cleaned up and so I take him back to his room and I'm trying to take off his dirty underwear and I pick him up, like this, like around his torso where his butt's in the air, and I'm pulling his underwear off and he begins to projectile defecate all over the wall, all over his curtains,
Yes.
That's
all
a
over
bully right
his
there.
room, right? And I'm like, I don't even know what I
Don't
don't
know how
even
to
know what to
process
do.
it. It's just happening. You're just
Yeah.
watching it in slow motion.
So my wife comes home. The kitchen floor is covered in pee. His entire bedroom curtains, everything is covered in that. I'm trying to give him a bath. The Blue Apron dish is burned and ruined. And oh man, that was you want to talk about a stressful day. That was a stressful day. So
You
I don't
needed
know if I
jujitsu.
could
You needed
top that.
jujitsu on that day, right? You
I
needed some
needed
jujitsu.
yes,
I will
yes.
say probably the funniest recent one for us. So our
Yeah.
girls will turn forward 4 days. All right. And Brent, he had stayed home with the girls and he had taken him to the zoo. He had taken them to the trampoline park. He had taken them to their favorite restaurant, Maria Cuca's. Like they love chips and
Hmm.
salsa and queso and tortillas, whatever. And
Me
I was
too.
working that day and he calls me on the way home. And I'm about an hour. Like my drive one way is usually about 45 minutes to an hour. So I'm about like 20 minutes away and he called me. He said, "Hey, like his thing is ices. Sarah, can you give me a Coke icy? Like, been a long day, whatever. There's a 7-Eleven around the corner, whatever." I thought, man, this is going great. Even the person in front of me bought the icy. Like the guy at the cashier, he's like, "Oh, it's only 2 bags. Okay, just go, just go." I was like, "All right, thanks, man." And then I get home, and the way our house is structured, you
Hmm.
come in through the garage, and the girls' rooms, you see them immediately when you come in. And when I came in and I heard them happily screaming, I'm like, "Oh, they're in the playroom. They're in their playroom playing." Look to my right, and I look in the door, and they're not there. Lights on, toys are scattered, they're not there.
Hmm.
But then I look down, and I see water all over the floor. And I start to walk, and Dad was just trying to take a 10-minute break. And the girls decided they wanted to give their stuffed toys a bath in their bathroom, not
It
in the
was
bathtub.
soaked,
They decided they wanted to do it in the sink, dunk them in the sink, and then put them on the bathroom floor and just let the water keep flowing.
and they were soaking wet. The whole bathroom
And
was
I,
covered in
I
water. It
go in
was
there, I'm like, "What are
flooded.
y'all doing?" And Dad's trying to take a break in the other room. He's like, "I thought they were in their playroom." They had flooded the bathroom. It had flowed out near the kitchen toward the garage, and we were
Oh Lord.
mopping it up. And I was like, "What do y'all do?" "Well, we're just playing." I'm just
Oh
like, "Oh my
man,
gosh."
it was a little easier to clean up than your mess, though. I think. I don't know if I
I
wanted to.
told you it wasn't as good.
A
It's
paint
funny, but it's not as good as that.
a painting your son gave your nursery a good painting, a good once over,
Oh, what do they
right?
call it? Where it's the splatter painting?
Jackson
Jackson
Pollock,
Pollock.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
he gave you a Jackson Pollock on your
Oh
curtain.
gosh, gross. We're getting close to the end of the podcast, and I had one more question before we kind of get into a couple more fun ones, but you might carry on with this one. What are your thoughts on debt?
Mm, okay. Um, a lot of people think that I have a weird perspective on this, and I fully understand why. But I view debt as modern day slavery, and I don't partake in it. And to be honest, if I was the president and I could do whatever I wanted, I feel like the first thing I would do would be to destroy the credit reporting agencies. I think it's a joke. I think it's a scam. And I don't think that your financial livelihood should be tied to how much money you have borrowed and paid back plus interest. I don't like the way the system is set up. I don't like anything about it. And I became fully debt free in it's either 2016 or 2017. And I've never looked back. Don't even own a credit card. Um, haven't needed to do it. How it all started was remember when I told y'all back in the Dollar General days and like, hey, I'm learning the business. I started making really good money. What a lot of people would consider good money. And I was kind of like, okay, this is good, but I'm like, I don't know how to manage this. So I started looking for something and get your drinks ready.
Oh
I
no.
look I was looking at Susie Orman. I looked into Dave Ramsey.
Oh, crap.
Yeah, yeah, I looked into a
Oh,
lot of
he did
things
it.
and
He did it.
ultimately what I settled on keep drinking was Dave Ramsey. The reason I did that is because it was it seemed like the simplest, most straight to the point concept.
You gotta finish it,
And
Brent.
No,
yeah,
we'll finish in here in a second. I'm listening to the story here.
yeah. And I was like, I can make this work. So me and my wife got on the plan. I still remember calling to cancel my credit card that I had, and the lady's like, I want to say the card at the time had like a $30,000 limit or something like that. And I was just like, I don't need it. I'm done. I'm done. So, financially, I've built my life totally different since I went that route in 2013. I will say, just to be fair to everyone, I know that some people aren't the biggest Dave Ramsey fans, and I understand why. And there are some things with the program that, looking back now, I wish I would have done differently. I find myself listening when I'm listening to finances. I'm kind of in my Caleb Hammer era. I really like his sense of humor and the way he does it. Um, but yeah, I mean, those are my view on debt, and a lot of people think I'm crazy for that, but I don't really care because there are no wolves knocking on my door. So,
Do you like the biblical aspect of what Dave Ramsey brings? Do you think that helps his program? Do you think being grounded in your faith helps as well?
yeah, and it is rooted. I mean, it is a he uses a lot of biblical concepts, but the thing about the biblical concepts is it's just like common sense. Like, hey, if you don't have the money, don't do it. And I remember when I started making a lot of money, I was just driving a Ford Explorer. And there were people in the office at Schneider that made fun of me about that. They're like, "What? You're making all this money and you're just driving a Ford Explorer? Like that's what you're doing?" And I was on a plan. And the
You
thing
don't
is,
anymore. You don't
no,
anymore,
no,
man. That new
Buff-
car you have is
Was it Buffett
nice.
that has
I
the old car? I think Warren
Yes.
Buffett just has like the car like that. And I just remember reading that and I was thinking like that makes sense. And
yeah,
Brett knows.
Phil
I've
doesn't
yeah,
have the Explorer anymore, Sarah. He has something a little nicer nowadays. That thing I think is a
yeah.
tank.
I have absolutely upgraded. I've it's been a blessing, but I think I made the right choice when I look back on my experience with Dave Ramsey up until the point when I started to when I was debt free. I think if I managed things a little bit different and deviated from his plan a little bit, I would probably be a little further ahead than I am now. Um, but I wouldn't have been managing for risk had I done that. And I can honestly say I have no regrets, and I learned a lot from it. People, it's just that people think the no debt thing is weird, but I end up saving a lot of money anyways. When you're paying cash, you can get a lot of discounts. You can get deals done faster. When I bought my wife her last car, I'm like, they're like, how are you going to pay? And I was like, I can do duffel bag or personal check. What would you like? You know, and, and that's,
I think
it
some
just,
people think that's inconceivable though. Like I feel like people think, well, I have this credit card or like the way things are these days, it's, inflation, whatever you want to call it, the economy. It's like,
mhm.
is that inconceivable or is it one decision at a time?
$100 a month, $100 a month invested at about a 12% return. I believe it's over 40 years is $1.1 million. You live in the most prosperous country in the most prosperous time in the history of the world. And there are people that are not going to like me saying this, but if you do not retire a millionaire, it is your fault. It doesn't take much money. It takes what you're spending on Starbucks. Now, where people are at a disadvantage is not that they don't have the money or a little bit of resources to get it going. It's that they don't know how to do it and they don't know where to put it. And I would say, like, as I've gone through my journey, that's one of the ways that I've tried to get back to people. When people, there are many times in that Schneider meeting room that I was there after work with someone, building them out a budget,
I
helping them.
remember you talking about it on the floor with people. I
Yeah,
remember hearing you doing that after hours.
there are people today that I actively manage their Vanguard accounts for them now, just to help them. There are people that I will make investment recommendations to this day now, or I will do it for them. So anytime someone has asked me for help in that space, be it build a budget, get on a plan, help me invest. I love doing it. I absolutely love doing it. And I wouldn't turn down the opportunity to help someone if they wanted the help. But I've noticed that's where most people are at the disadvantage is they don't know what to do. But you can come up with 50 to $100 a month.
So
You
you don't think
absolutely can.
you should take out a an installment plan for door dashing McDonald's?
No,
You're staunchly against that.
I was just waiting for that to happen on Caleb Hammer, where it was clarinet debt. No, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, there are some people that can use revolving debt as a lever or tool or whatever you want to call it. But the studies that I've looked into says when you're spending cash or the money's coming directly out of your bank account, it activates the pain sensors in your brain. The money is gone immediately. You're not just swiping something and it's like, hey, I'll come back to it later. And what they say is even the people that pay their credit cards off every single month, you on average spend 18% more when you're swiping a card than when you're not just freely swiping a card. So I just it kind of feels like playing with fire to me, and I'm not interested in doing it. And most people don't understand, and that's okay.
Don't share this too much. You'll hurt my brother's business, the bankruptcy attorney, okay? Like he's counting on people not
Another
understanding.
tittle. Can't
Yeah.
hurt another tittle here.
Yeah, can't hurt another
Uh,
tittle. So in the theme of Christmas, I've got a Christmas question and then Sarah has one as well. So
yeah.
we have a running total. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Come on, Phil. Give me the right answer.
Listen, this one's
I don't have any more drink. I can't. Well, we owe you a
it's
sip.
okay. It's okay. It's difficult. I understand the arguments on both sides, but due to setting, I have to say yes.
Yeah, 2 and
No,
0.
Like
Phil,
2 and 0.
no. Come
even I'm
on.
sorry, the elevator opens and the guy's sitting there in the Santa hat. No one wants to watch that in July. Listen, I feel like the setting is more important than the story when it comes to is it a Christmas movie? If you
You
took
open the door. You open Pandora's box if
if
that's your
you
category. If that's your qualifier, Phil,
no,
come
and
on.
listen, you could take four
While you were
Christmases.
sleeping, Harry Potter. You can just
No, it's
open
just
Pandora's box there, man.
The
Come
whole movie
on.
is Christmas though,
That's
Sarah.
yes.
The whole
qualifier.
movie is during
If
Christmas. It's a
Christmas is
Christmas
in the
party.
setting, no, no, no,
It's a
no. He said
Christmas
if
party.
Christmas is in the setting, is what he said.
Well, I'm
You know how
saying
much
is the
Pandora's
main.
box opens
No,
there? Come on
I'm
now.
no, it
Hell,
has to be the main setting. Okay, take four Christmases,
that's not the main setting.
but take four Christmases.
Great movie.
Amazing movie.
It's
You
about Christmas Day.
and it
That's
could. That's my
different.
point.
That is
Thank you.
so
It
different.
it could be about Thanksgiving Day, and they would
It
never
could
miss
be.
a beat. It's a Christmas movie because the Christmas theme is all around you. You take the movie The Sandlot, and
You're
they're
giving
out there.
presents. There's presents on Christmas Day of four Christmases. There's even a scene where Vince Vaughn's going to his family. It's like, oh, I didn't know the budget. And the kid gets a flashlight. It's like, Santa was cheap on me this year. Christmas. That's not Thanksgiving.
What were
Listen,
the
Come
names?
on now.
It was Orlando.
Yeah,
Come on,
it's
help me out
Orlando.
here.
His name is Orlando.
Oh, so good.
it was an amazing movie. Listen, Sarah,
Come on,
I
Phil.
listen. I love you. I respect your opinion, but no one agrees with you. So,
A lot of people agree with me,
What is the
actually.
next question, Sarah? What's the next question? What's
So, what does the Christmas season mean to you?
well, I mean, it's a celebration of the birth of Jesus Christ. I mean, that's literally what it is, Christ's Mass. So, that's what it means to me. That's what's told in my household. We also do all the other fun stuff as well, but that is absolutely what it is.
We always ask our girls, what is the reason for the season?
Hmm.
Baby Jesus.
Hmm.
I don't think we have any more questions. We actually got through our allotted time, but I'm pretty sure you'll probably be back for another episode soon. And
Yep.
hopefully we get around to golfing at some point and you can beat me again. I will beat you at one point, but probably not wrestling and jiu-jitsu. You probably get me the first few times until I kind of just learn to stand up with
A
you kind of
few,
grappling me,
maybe
I
a little
think.
more than a few.
Sarah.
Well, listen, the golf could go either way. That was so close that we're on the same level. So we'll
I,
just.
I've I've improved greatly. I just want that stated there. I've spent a decent amount of time golfing, so I need to learn jujitsu now. So
Okay. All right. Well, you let me know when you're ready.
sounds good.
Cool. Cool.
Well, I think that's concludes this episode. We really appreciate you joining us. Like I said, you were the one that took the first call when I had a fall off for a porta potty company in Sparta, Wisconsin, for three truckloads to pick up. My really heavy fat butt was at Wendy's getting lunch, and you took the call and you said, "Hey, man, there's a guy here asking where his truckloads are of Porta Johns," and I had to tell them they weren't coming. And you go, "You got to learn the first thing in logistics is to play hot potato with your issues. They just get worse if you avoid them." And honestly, that piece of advice has stuck with me forever. I coached it today when
Hmm.
in issue resolution and operations. And so that rings true today is just issues get worse the longer you don't approach them. And so thank you for teaching me that lesson. And
Well, and I want to thank you also. I mentioned this to Brett probably about a week ago. You probably had one of the best toasts at our wedding.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
We had people who were struggling before that, and then Phil comes up and brings it home.
and
Now,
if
So we want to show
have you
appreciation for
and
that.
I got the chat when you showed up that day because he knew I liked redheads. He goes, "You see that copper top come in today?" So
yeah, that was fun. I'm happy y'all invited me. I'm happy I was able to be there for y'all and to give a speech. I really enjoyed it. And y'all are one of the few, if not the only Schneider weddings that I was invited to partake in. So it meant a lot to me too, and I wanted to make sure I made the most of it while I was there. So thank y'all.
the pleasure was ours, all
Yeah,
ours.
awesome.
Sure. Well, thank you, Phil. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's good to see both of you. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it as well.
Let's do this again sometimes. Thank you.
All right.